Okay, so for your assignment today, you're going to be doing a meal planning activity, and you should see on Google Classroom posted 2 different parts of this lesson. The first one is the meal planning activity document, which will look like this, and we'll have all of the instructions. This is good for you to look over. I am going to actually work more off of this second one, though, and this second one is a sample meal planning document that I have done, which should mimic kind of what you are doing. So I'm going to mainly work off this because I just feel like it's easier to explain. But remember, this one will have descriptions of almost everything I'm going to say. All right, so what you're going to do, this is an assignment that's worth 60 points, and it is teaching you how to plan a meal. Anyone who plans or makes your dinners does this. They might be doing it in their head because of lots of practice, but it is required to have a meal that is fully balanced, fully prepped, and everything is on the table at the same time, fully prepared. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is this step right here, 1A, of find a recipe for an entree where poultry is used. And so I'm going to recommend chicken and turkey instead of like duck or quail or goose, because for this particular assignment, you will just find it easier to work with. So find your recipe. Also say where you got it from. Now, for me, I used a cookbook for all of my assignment, but you can use the internet. Just know that you will need to give me the website right here, the URL, instead of the book and page number. Okay. You will note that I put right here on a separate piece of either computer paper or notebook paper, you will need to copy this entire recipe that you find. Everything, title, ingredients and measurements, directions, yield. I will need the entire recipe. Without that, I cannot grade this assignment. Okay, so for my sample, I'm using oven fried turkey. You can do any entree that you find with poultry. So you could do fried chicken, orange fried chicken. You could do turkey and rice casserole, chicken pot pie, a whole turkey like you'd get at Thanksgiving. Just an entree with poultry is the main part. 1B is where you're going to read your recipe and find how you're preparing the bird. I'm roasting mine in the oven, so that's my cooking method. Make sure you read the entire recipe because often there will be multiple ways you cook it. For instance, if I'm making a casserole that calls for cut up cooked chicken, I will have to have pre-cooked that chicken some way, of some method. So I will have 2 methods. I would then have like boiling, if that's how I first cooked my chicken. And then I would also have where it's cooked with the casserole in the oven, which would be baking or roasting. Okay, this may be pan fried, maybe simmering or stewing or grilling. However you're cooking your poultry is what you list there. How will the recipe be served? This is what it'll look like at the table. Now mine is oven fried turkey. It's kind of like making fried chicken, so it's in the pieces. Okay. Maybe yours is a whole bird. Maybe it's a part of a recipe, like that's how it would be if it's a casserole or like an orange fried chicken or chicken tacos. It's served as a part of a whole recipe. Okay, step 2. You will need a book for this, a green textbook, page 503. First thing you need to do is figure out what kind of poultry you need, which should be listed on your recipe. It'll tell you chicken or turkey. It might even specify like turkey thighs, chicken breasts. That needs to be listed, but that is on your recipe. Your recipe should standardly serve 4 to 6 people. It will tell you on there somewhere if it does. If it does not, you're going to have to maybe do some of the math here yourself. If your recipe already serves 4 to 6 people, you just write down whatever your recipe says for the amount of poultry you need, like 2 breasts, 3 thighs, 6 legs, whatever it says. Remember, if it doesn't give you, you know that you need 1 pound per person. So for mine, I have 4 to 6 pounds to serve 4 to 6 people. Also remember that if it calls for cut up cooked chicken, 1 pound equals 1 cup. So if my recipe calls for 2 cups of cut up cooked chicken, I need to buy 2 pounds of poultry. This third one is where you need the book on page 503. You need to remember and combine the things we've learned. Okay, so find your cooking method, which for mine is roasting. I know that's a dry heat method, so I know I need a more tender bird. In my book, it'll tell me what style of chicken or turkey is a more tender bird. A broiler fryer chicken is a more tender bird, which I will need for my dry heat method. If you're using a moist heat method, you would need a drier or less tender bird, which would be like a stewing chicken. If you're using turkey, now I know that here I have a type of chicken and I need turkey. I just did that for an example to explain, but really what I should put here is because I need a turkey that's only 4 to 6 pounds, I need to buy a hen. Okay, because we know hens go up to 16 pounds. If I needed a turkey that was 24 pounds or 20 pounds, I would have to buy a tom because that's a larger turkey. The next step is where you are going to round out your entree with the other parts of the meal. You are not copying these recipes. You are only writing down the titles and reference for them. So again, I used a cookbook, so I use page numbers. If you use the internet, you will have a website next to each of these. Couple things to remember here. One, if you are serving like a Mexican entree, you should not have an Italian side. Okay, they need to complement each other. Another thing, don't overwhelm the meal with a certain style of ingredient. Like for instance, I wouldn't want to have mushrooms in every single one of these. And third, every one of these has to be an actual recipe. You can't just put like corn as your veggie. You have to have found a recipe. You can't just put soda as your beverage. You have to find a recipe for a beverage. Okay, next step is the meal plan. This is where you are mapping out the exact process of cooking. You are working backwards. Down here is where you would be eating. You work backwards through this process. Okay, figuring out the first thing you have should be what will take the longest or what you can prep ahead. And then you work down to mealtime. Okay, so for instance, the night before, all of us are probably thawing our poultry. I can also make my beverage ahead of time and refrigerate it. Okay, 2.5 hours before my meal, I'm going to start my salad and dessert. Now, does it take 2.5 hours to make my salad? No, but I can refrigerate it and make it and refrigerate it so I have this time where it's a little more crunch time free to do other things. Same with my dessert. It was a apple Betty, which is like an apple cobbler. I can cook that ahead of time and set it aside and then reheat it so that my oven is available for these other things I need. My corn casserole. Other things you need to remember, okay? Like for this corn casserole, it does not bake for an hour and a half, but I need to figure prep time in there too. Maybe it bakes for 45 minutes, but it'll take me 20 or 30 minutes to do all the prep work before getting it in the oven. Okay, and also think what you can do simultaneously. Like here, while my corn casserole is baking, I can start my poultry, and then while both of those are cooking, I can do my appetizer. And then I can reheat my dessert while I'm eating. All of these should be in a logical sequence. It can't go like 30 minutes here, and then 2.5 hours here, and then 45 minutes, and then 3 hours, because I'm following this as if it was a recipe in order to get all my meal at the table at the same time. So when you're doing these and finding these sides and stuff, make sure you glance through the recipe and get an overall idea of how long it would take to not only bake it, but also prep it. Last step is very easy. Record the 6 food groups: protein, veggies, fruit, grain, dairy, and fat. Say how at least one thing in all of your meal will meet each of these food groups. I do not need you to list everything you eat and categorize it. I'm just trying to see that your meal was balanced enough to have met all 6 food groups. So for instance, the turkey in my entree is the protein, the mushrooms in my appetizer are the veggie, the apple in my dessert is the fruit, breadcrumbs in my appetizer are the grain, cheese in my side salad's the dairy, and then there was butter in my dessert, which was the fat. When you are done, staple this paper to this copied recipe that you have written down. Make sure your names are on it and turn it in the appropriate basket.